So today we're going to move on to session 3. We've been going over the purpose for wealth. Now we're going to start getting into a little bit of nuts and bolts. So first question I want you to answer for yourself is, do you see yourself becoming financially independent? Can you see that? Until you can see that, you may not be able to achieve that. But what is financially independent? What is that for you? Pardon me? I've left, but I haven't arrived. It's good word. So, is it just your bills paid? No. For some people it might be. That's the first step, right? You got to start somewhere. Is it excess income? Okay, again, that may be the next step, is a little bit of excess income. No debt. More than that. Because God says more than enough. Is it you can quit your job? Maybe. What about never having to work again? That's a relative term. Work as in I've got to go to work for wages, maybe. But work as in I've got things to do. You probably will never quit work. Or if you do, you'll end up like Billy on the couch and his wife will get in there and say, "Get off that couch or I'm going to kill you." You know? And now he's busier than he's ever been. So we'll always have something to do because God gave us something to work. And we found out yesterday that work is what? Worship. Work is worship. So maybe we won't have to work again for wages. In other words, working for the money. But we're working to accomplish something that God's put in our heart. So where are you in your personal journey to becoming financially independent? And what are some of the challenges for you? Capture that. Write that down. What just bubbled up in you? God gave Billy a view of money and wealth, and he calls it the triple X factor. And this is a 30,000-foot view of how you can get wealth. Everybody understand what a 30,000-foot view is? That means you're way up there looking down on it so you can see everything. You can kind of see the overall. You can't see the detail necessarily, but you can generally see what's happening. Okay, that's what a 30,000-foot view is. So go back to Deuteronomy 8:18. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, or power to become rich, or power to make wealth. So becoming wealthy is something that God has put in us, and he's given us the ability and the power to do it. So if it's something he's given us the power to do, it's not something we should shy away from, right? It's something we should wholeheartedly pursue and step into. And we talked about yesterday about the purpose of wealth. So we're going to get beyond that. We're going to assume that your motivation for becoming wealthy is so that you can be a blessing, so that you can establish God's kingdom here on the earth. It's so that you can change people's lives. That's the assumption we're going to make from this point forward, okay? So, building wealth is more than eliminating debt. If you eliminated every debt that you have, would you be wealthy? You'd be on your way, but you wouldn't be wealthy. So if you just focus on eliminating debt, you're just focusing on the very, very first step. Have you ever attempted or participated in a debt-free program? We talked about Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey focuses on getting out of debt. Anybody remember a gentleman called Larry Burkett? He was kind of the Dave Ramsey of his day. Same thing, getting out of debt. Nothing wrong with that. That's something we need to do to be good stewards of what we've been given. But I think there was, at one point in time, somebody called in to Dave Ramsey's program. No, it was at one of his events. And they were recognizing those who had gotten out of debt and achieved financial independence. And out of all the people that had achieved financial independence through Dave Ramsey's program, the maximum net worth of that group of people was about $3 million. So getting out of debt and getting your finances and your spending under control can get you so far. But after that, you kind of hit a ceiling. So what's your experience like if you have participated in one of those? It was probably very freeing once you started mastering your money, right? How many of you have done that? Okay? There's several of you here that are fairly young and maybe you haven't gotten into debt, so you haven't had to get out of debt. That's a great place to be. Stay there. But others of us have gotten into debt, and it seems like every time we get to the top to get out of debt, we put our foot on another rock and we slide back down. How many experience that? Yeah. Something happens that you weren't expecting. Life happens. So there are 3 kinds of money. Did you know that? So we talk about the first one is the first X. This is the type of money that you work for and you get paid. That's your job. You trade your time for money. Everybody's got to start somewhere. And the first resource that you have to put to work is your time, your energy. Somebody will pay you for that time and energy, right? Did you know that in third world countries, they have a hard time trading their time for money? They don't typically have the opportunity for jobs, especially entry-level jobs like we do here in the United States. So we are blessed because we have something to start with. Again, I was telling y'all that my daughter started her first job, or actually her second job, but a couple of weeks ago, she's trading her time for money. That's all she's got. So that first X is this. You invest once, you get paid once. Put your time in, you get paid for that time you put in. They're not going to pay you for the same hour next week, are they? Hey, I already put in my time last week. I said, well, that's gone. I need you to put in time this week. So you invest once, you get paid once. That's called level 1 income. Money that you work for. The purpose is tithe, offering, asset building, and you live out of that money. Where does that money come from? Typically, it's a job. The category is an employee, self-employed. How many of you are self-employed? You think you own a business. If you're self-employed, you don't own a business, you own a job. Because if you don't show up tomorrow at that business that you say you own, will it continue to operate and continue to generate income? If it doesn't, then it's a job. You just happen to own it. Now, if you can not be there and it continued to generate income, then it becomes a business. Okay? Definition of a business, somebody once said, is if you can leave it and a year from now come back and it's better off than it was when you left it, that's a business. So that's non-leveraged income. In other words, you don't show up, you don't get the income. There's no leverage to it. Second X, that's a place of freedom. That's called foundational wealth. Think of the Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad, Poor Dad passive income. I own some rent houses. They generate income because I'm renting them, right? If I don't get up and go to work today, that tenant still has to pay me rent. Okay? So that money's still going to come in whether I get up and go to work or not. That doesn't mean there's not work involved in managing that asset, but it means that I don't have to go put in the time. Okay? It's a place of freedom because I can choose what I do today. If I have enough passive income, I have enough investments that are generating enough income, then I can choose, what do I do today? Do I go travel? Do I go sit on the couch? Do I go play golf? Do I come to school? I can do what I want. That's freedom. And that's where a lot of Americans, that's where they want to go, the freedom. And it's called foundational wealth because now you have something to work with. You're not just living out of it. So that second X income, you invest once, but you get paid multiple times. How many times do you have to pay for that rent house? Once. Once you pay for it, the rent that comes in month after month, year after year, it keeps coming. But you don't have to pay for the house again. You only invest once. So level 2 income, that's the second X. That's money that works for you. You've invested the money's making money. The purpose is still tithe and offering. You're still living off of it, but you're using it as a foundational wealth. And you're using it for asset building. Everybody understand what an asset is? Anybody? Give me a quick definition of an asset. Something that pays you. That's an excellent one. It appreciates. It goes up in value. Anybody else? Those are two of the best definitions. It pays you and it goes up in value. Okay, that's an asset. So when it says asset building, that means you're buying assets. Anybody played the game Cash Flow? But Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So anybody played Monopoly? Okay. Cash Flow is a more realistic version of Monopoly. But several years ago, they have a cash flow for kids. And I was playing with some of my kids, and one of their friends was there. And in the game, you can land on a little section called doodads, which those are things you spend money on you really shouldn't or don't want to. Sometimes it's a coffee, real expensive coffee, or you take somebody out to dinner. Or in this case, it was you purchase 2 jet skis, and you have to put some money down, and then you have to pay these payments, and that's called a doodad. That's taking money out of your pocket, not putting money in, right? And so my son's friend sat there and he was, oh man, geez. He's looking at that because we played the game enough, he knew. But he sat there for a minute and he thought. He said, hey, if I take these jet skis to South Padre Island and rent them out, they become assets, don't they? And I said, you got it. So it's not necessarily what you buy, but it's what you do with what you buy. So it's asset income. That means income off your assets, income off that rent house or that business. You're a business owner, investor, and you manage your assets. You don't work for them. Remember I told you, if you have the rent house, you still got to do something, right? You got to manage that asset. You got to make repairs. You got to decide which tenants you're going to put in it, things like that. But you don't have to get up today and do that, and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, just to make sure it makes money. You have to do it periodically, but you don't have to do it each and every day for it to earn income. So that's money working for you. Second X, level 2 income. Third X, this is philanthropy. Excess income to give away. Multiple assets, wealth preservation, and growth. This is city and nation transformation. When I say wealth preservation, what does that mean? Protecting your wealth. I told y'all yesterday that I manage property for a 90-year-old investor who's purchased over $500 million worth of property in his lifetime. Okay? One of the things he is real concerned about is exposure. Is somebody going to be able to sue me and take away my wealth? That's one. But you know the other thing that he really, really harps on? His son controls about a third of that portfolio. And his son, that portfolio's been around a while, so there's not a lot of debt on it, so it accumulates a lot of cash. And he is just irate that his son is sitting on so much cash. Why would he be upset that his son is sitting on cash? It's not working for him. Inflation's eating away the value of it. So he's not preserving that wealth. So there's a different mindset. Many of you, myself included, yeah, I'd love to be sitting on millions of dollars. But at some point, you need to put that to work. There's a prudent amount to keep and to have in reserve depending on what your exposure is on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, year-to-year basis. But at some point, too much is too much. You need to put it to work. Otherwise, your wealth is being eaten away. So that's level 3 income. It's money that works without you. The purpose is to give it all away. That's philanthropy. Multiple assets, preserving your wealth, growing your wealth, city and nation transformation. You've always heard the thing, oh, come on, you've got so much money, you could give me $1 million, you'd never know it. Right? Well, that's not preserving the wealth. That's not growing the wealth. That's not being a good steward. That's why those people have that money. It's because they're good stewards. And they're not giving it away to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that comes and asks. That may have a real legitimate need. The type is you're an absentee owner and it's asset income. The category is you are an investor. So where are you at? Level 1? Level 2? Level 3? There could be people sitting right next to you that are level 3. You never know it. Turn over and ask them, you level 3? If you're level 3, come see me at the break, please. Some of you may be somewhere in the middle. You're still at level 1, but pursuing level 2. But you got a vision for level 3. So wealth building begins by first locating where you are, right? And I ask you that, where are you? So we're going to use an example of a typical American household. Some of these numbers are several years old. But typical income in a typical American household in recent history is about $50,000 a year in income. And then $54,000 in expenses. How can you have more expenses than you have income? Credit. Or just not paying your bills. Right? We manage some small set of apartments, and the level of income of the people that live there is very low. And throughout the years, we've had those people that are apartment hoppers. You know, they'll get in, they'll pay a month or two, and then they'll stay without paying as long as they can until you kick them out. Then they'll go do it somewhere else. So that's how you can live on, you can pay out more than you get. So there's a chart. I think the chart is in your notes. Each dot on that chart represents 1 month's expenses or 1 month's income. So here's the chart. Okay, here's the time frame, here's the chart. So each one of these dots, this red one or pink one, or for you the less gray one, represents your expenses, while these black ones represent your income. So you see the income's just under $4,000, between $3,000 and $4,000 a month, but yet the expenses are closer to $5,000 a month. So at some point, if you are doing Dave Ramsey or watching your income and expenses, you get to this point where your income matches your expenses, right? That's called the first X. You at least get to the point where you're paying off your debt and you're able to pay your bills with the income that you're receiving. Okay? As you continue to work this, you'll notice now you have excess income over your expenses. That's at the point you can start building assets. Start buying something that will create or generate income. A rent house. Or the jet skis like my son's friend was going to do. Anything else that y'all can think of? Nowadays, they've made it real easy to buy a car, put it on Turo, and rent it out. Right? So buying a car, which used to be just a sinkhole for money to go into, now can become an asset because it can generate income. Airbnb has really helped out of, okay, I can't buy a rent house, but I do have an extra bedroom. So without a lot of expense, I can turn that bedroom into an asset. And I can begin to build that. Okay? But you have to have a little bit of extra money. So you continue working this, and all of a sudden, see the little green dots down here? You've bought an asset or two that begin generating income without you. These green dots represent level 2 income. Your assets are earning income. So now it's no longer you going to work, putting in your time and getting paid. Now it's something outside of you that you own that you're putting to work that's generating income. Even if it's just your money. Putting money into a savings account used to be a way to earn some legitimate income. Now, there's not too much income there, but at least it's something. Your money is doing something and working for you. So, you continue this, and at some point, your asset income is going to match or exceed your expenses. That's the second X. Now, you're in that place where I don't have to get up and go to work today to get money to live on, to pay my bills, to feed me, to do anything. My rent houses are doing it. Or my jet skis. Or my fleet of Turo cars. Okay? So that's the second X. Now you're getting to the point of freedom, and you can You have financial independence. You can quit your job if you choose. So you continue doing that, and you'll notice our expenses continue to go down. Why is that? All of a sudden, you don't need quite as much as you thought you needed. Your house is paid for, your cars are paid for. And you'll find that your living expenses can continue to drop even as you continue to make more money. So that's going to keep happening. Then at some point, you're going to decide, I've got enough cash flow, enough income to live on. That's a personal decision at whatever point that is. Then you can start giving it all away. That's at the point when you can say, whatever I get beyond this amount, I'm going to invest in the kingdom. I'm going to give. I'm going to support missionaries. That doesn't mean that you literally give it away, but you may give that income away. Or you may use that money to fund different things in third world countries. Microfinance is a big one that we deal with in business school. Lending money. They have a bank in Uganda. And one of the reasons that there was a demand and need for the bank in Uganda is the central lending rate, meaning what the banks could borrow money at from the central bank, was like 25%. So imagine what you, as a borrower out there in real life, would have to pay in interest. So what was happening is the Muslims would come in and they would buy the land and real estate where churches were located and kick the churches out, kick the Christian churches out, because the churches had no place to borrow money. So Billy and his group, Tricord Global, started a bank so they could lend money to the churches at a reasonable rate. They earn money on that money, but it's a funding of the kingdom at a different level. Okay? So that's the third X. So remember, kingdom building, that's where that starts. And that's where we want to get to, right? Because God said that He's given you the power to get wealth to do what? Establish His covenant, build His kingdom, bring His kingdom here on earth. If you look at this, the first X is typically Dave Ramsey. Nothing wrong with the first X. We all need to try to get there because we need to be good stewards of our money. The second X, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, getting out of the rat race. That's a great goal to get to. But where are you headed? Where do you really want to be headed? Kingdom building. That's what wealth is truly about. This second X is typically about you and your family, giving you freedom. You can do things, you can go places, you can fund things on a certain level. But there are some of you that are called to this third X, to be kingdom builders. And it's more than just the money. It's what are you doing with that money? What can you do with that money? United States is one of the biggest givers in the world, right? When there are catastrophes and all that kind of stuff. And so We go into countries that have been ravaged by storms or things like that, and they need food. And these aid agencies, they'll go in and they'll take food. And if they don't deploy it correctly, they can devastate the economy. Think about this. You go into a country and they eat rice. So you bring shiploads of rice and you give it to them. You have fed them. But what have you done to the rice farmers in that country? You've wiped them out, because now I can go get rice for free instead of paying in the marketplace. So a better way for an aid organization is to come in, buy as much of the rice as they can from the local farmers, locally source it. They may have to supplement it, but if they buy it from them, that keeps that money in that economy. It keeps those farmers in business so they can plant another crop, so they can start to build back up to where they were prior to what happened. That's a different mindset than just giving $1, giving $100, giving $1 million, giving $1 billion, whatever it is. And so God's calling you to be a kingdom builder. Some of you in a very big way. Some of you in smaller ways, and that's fine. But He needs people out there with wisdom to see opportunities and to see how you can best go into a city or a nation and transform them on an economic level. David Briggs, who's Billy's partner, he comes in and he teaches a class called Business's Mission is the first one, but then he comes back and teaches microfinance. And he shows you how lending $50, $100, $300 to somebody in a local poor, impoverished area can raise them and bring them not only out of poverty, where they can then provide for themselves. All of a sudden, they begin to create jobs and then provide for others, and then create another job and then another job, right? And that creates an economy. So now you take people who have the basic needs, which is food, shelter, and clothing, and you move them up the economic scale to where they are productive members of that community, and they're elevating the mundane to the holy. We heard that yesterday, didn't we? That's on a very small level. But if you do it enough, it could cost you a lot of money. But what they have found is there is a way to do it, and it not only gives the people the resources to help themselves, which people want to do because of self-respect. You give them money, then they're just consumers. And they're victims. And what do victims want? They think you owe them more and you owe them something, right? But if you give them opportunity and resources to help themselves, then they have some dignity and they grow, and then they get to the point where they're grateful for that opportunity and they help others and give them that opportunity. And so it's self-perpetuating. So kingdom building is not about you building your kingdom. It's about you building God's kingdom and establishing His kingdom here on the earth. And we talked about yesterday, that's also the place where you get into influence. It was last year. I think it was last year. I had Billy scheduled to teach. But he goes over to Africa every spring, typically Uganda, Kenya, those areas. And so this time he was over in Kenya and he was on his way back and he was scheduled to teach, and I get a call from his office saying he's not going to be here. And why isn't he going to be here? Oh, because the the president of Uganda wanted to meet with him. I guess I can let you go for that, but, don't let it happen again. No. And why is that? Because the president and his wife were seeing the impact that Billy and the bank and the microfinance was having on his country and his people. So that gave Billy influence with those leaders. Don't you think that opens doors to do even more and impact more people? That's a lot of influence. That's a lot of power. That's where God's calling you. That's why God's put desires in some of your hearts to get to that third X. It's not about you. If it's about you, I know there's people in the world that it's about them. Get all you can all you get, sit on your can. Right? But I think there's a scripture that's kind of going to work against them. What is it? The wealth of the wicked is laid up for the wise. The wicked have a lot of wealth. Why is that? Because you haven't stepped into your field yet. So the blessing of God, the rain, that's going to cause that to bring forth a harvest hasn't been sent yet because you're not there to work it. I truly believe that there is wealth that is hidden from you for you. But you know what it looks like? Work. Remember yesterday I gave the example of God's plantation? And He starts you out at a little plot. It'll produce enough for you and a little bit more. He's got to train some of you in that little plot. So you can be faithful. You can learn some things. So then you can handle some more. And then you can handle some more. Remember, He wouldn't let the children of Israel go into the promised land all at once and dispossess all the people that were there all at once, because the children of Israel did not have the capacity to manage it. So that your promised land is possessed right now. And God's waiting for you to move into it, to dispossess it, because He said, I'll give you every place your foot shall tread. Well, that means you got to do some walking. It means you got to do some work in that promised land to move into it, to begin to occupy it. Part of what you're doing here at Charis Bible College is preparing. Preparation time is not wasted time. It's not. Sometimes preparation time is for you to mature and season. Sometimes it's because your promised land isn't quite ready for you to walk into. Sometimes there's a divine connection or connections that haven't crossed your path yet. Many different things. Are you stewarding your time? Are you stewarding the season you're in? On your way to that third X, because you know it's in your heart. Some people want to go just from the first X to the third X. If they did that, like the lottery winners tend to do, they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to steward it. They don't know how to preserve it. They don't know how to grow it. All they know how to do is consume it. I give you a bunch of seed and you don't know how to sow it, plant it, tend it, grow it, and then harvest it, what's going to happen? You're going to eat what you can as long as it's good, but the rest of it's going to rot. Right? So that's the end of session 3. We're going to move on a little bit. Still got a little bit of time. What does financial freedom look like to you? There is one thing I want to back up just a second. One of the things you do need to understand is you don't always have to get to the first X, meaning you're out of debt, before you start building the second X. Now, some of you may need to do that, to go through that process. But others of you, there's opportunities that come to your door. Billy, the first time I'd heard him say this, he said it the other day in class, that not everybody is a real strong manager the way Dave Ramsey lays that out. Sometimes people are real strong builders or creators. So there may be things that come across your path. You're learning, you're applying yourself to wisdom and to knowledge and the principles, but you may not be quite there. But yet God's dropping off at your doorstep opportunities that He's expecting you to move through. If you look through the Old Testament, the people that He called were not always qualified. Right? Some of them were. Some of them were Joseph's. Joseph was very qualified. He had a plan. He knew how to manage it. And so he managed it during the 7 years of famine. The 7 years of prosperity, so that he could have the assets they needed to get them through that 7 years of famine, right? Somebody had to do that. Somebody had to have the strength and the wisdom to do that. Because don't you know that while they were in this prosperity, people were asking, why are you storing up all this grain? Why are you storing this up? Don't you see how much is coming out of the fields? We got so much. Why are you storing it up? Because he had a plan. He knew what was ahead. So there are people like that. But then there are others that were not on the face qualified for what God was calling them to do. So they had to step out and just follow what God said. And God qualified them. Have you ever been in that place? I'm in that place. I'm not real strong in this first X area, but I've got some opportunities that have come in the last few years that are going to propel me because of divine connections, principles, things that I've learned here that I'm putting into practice, and then experiences that I've had that God's pulling together and bringing together, that convergence that I was talking about yesterday. So don't get stuck and don't let Satan lie to you and say, just because you haven't been perfect over here in that first X, that you can't step into that second X. Because if you start to step into that second X by applying godly principles, that can accelerate that first X. Again, I can't go buy a rent house, but I got an extra room that I can Airbnb. Well, you're not past the first X yet, right? But you can start applying the principles of the second X and taking what you have and let it work for you and accelerate that. Only got a few minutes. Any questions? Any comments?
What is a good source that a person that's just starting out, financially, relying on their week paycheck? What is something that they can start applying their money to build up their assets?
So what's the best place to start for somebody who just has level 1 income, just a job, right? What can they start applying their money to begin that? We're going to get into that. But basically, the first thing you have, the biggest resource you have right now is yourself and your time. You bring value to the marketplace. You don't bring time. My daughter's bringing time to the marketplace. That's all she's got. Okay? I've got a little bit more than time. I've got experience, I've got knowledge, I've got wisdom that I can now bring to the marketplace. Okay? So that's why an employer is going to pay me more than he's going to pay my daughter, correct? So the first thing you need to spend money on is education, making yourself more valuable. And so with a little bit of money that you do have, I would invest in yourself first, and we're going to get there. You are doing that here at Charis on a spiritual level, but that transcends into your life. But if you come to business school next year, you're really going to be investing in yourself, because we're going to teach you a lot more nuts and bolts and make you a lot more valuable out in the marketplace. Not only in what you know and how you apply it. Any other questions? Y'all enjoying this? Yes. Are you glad you chose this elective? Yes. You need this elective. That is true. Anybody else? Okay, we got about 2 minutes. Spend that 2 minutes writing down what financial freedom looks like to you, because it's going to look different to each one of you. What's it going to look like to you? What can you see right now? And whenever you're done, we're less than a minute to the bell. So see you after the break.